Hey guys, how's it going? It's 8-Bit Eric. Welcome to the channel. Today we are going to review Metroid Dread, a game that a lot of people have been waiting for to get our Metroid fix. Metroid Prime 4 was delayed quite some time ago, but Nintendo decided to throw us a bone in the form of a 2D old school style type of Metroid game. This is what I'm most familiar with. I've had a love-hate relationship with Metroid throughout the years. If you've seen any of my videos in here, I tend to not really be a big fan of the Metroid series. Yeah, to me, I'm just kind of like, I can respect the fact that Metroid is a game that has a very important legacy in the hearts of Nintendo fans worldwide. But for me, I'm more of a Legend of Zelda, Super Mario, Star Fox kind of guy when it comes to my Nintendo franchises. With that said, Metroid Dread on the Nintendo Switch is one of my most anticipated Switch games coming out. This drip feed of the last couple years with all these weeaboo games and Animal Crossing and all that, I'm over it. I am completely 110% over it. So Metroid Dread is a welcomed addition to the Nintendo Switch library, in my opinion. So if you've played an old school Metroid game, you're going to come right at like a duck in water when it comes to Metroid. The old story of, Samus shows up somewhere, she loses all of her powers, so you're stripped down to like your basic blaster, and you have to navigate your way throughout a huge labyrinth type of, map that has you backtracking, getting your power-ups, and having to go back and reach inaccessible areas that you couldn't get until you get new power-ups or perhaps a new blaster that can open up a new door. It's the same old gameplay mechanics. I mean, if it ain't broken, honestly, should you really fix it? No. In a way, is Nintendo playing it safe with the Metroid formula? To be honest, it's not much any different than Legend of Zelda. Same thing happens there. Link wakes up, he has no abilities, no powers, you have to go and get the sword and the shield, and then you end up getting your bow and everything eventually. So in this game, Samus finds himself, and I'm not going to get too much into plot points, but it is pretty standard Metroid. If you played a Metroid game in the past, the story kind of follows more or less what you would expect from a Metroid game. This time around, though, one of the huge elements of the gameplay is that there's certain little areas in the game that are kind of sectioned off, and these are the E.M.M.I zones. So E.M.M.I is kind of like a robotic type of, mercenary drone that is programmed to kill Samus upon sight. So you'll enter these areas, they kind of have like a weird staticky black and white vibe, and the E.M.M.I is looking for you. When they see you and their field of vision, they kind of do like a thing where they do like some kind of sonar radar thing on the screen. If it detects you, they will immediately hunt you down. The only way to escape is to get out of their line of sight and find your way through an E.M.M.I zone door. So not like a regular door. There's like these special doors that are kind of like a portal that the E.M.M.I can't go past. E.M.M.I is able to use a vent, so it's kind of like Among Us. They're able to use a vent to go back and forth really quickly in these zones. Once they get a hold of you, you're pretty much dead. You do have a chance to kind of do a melee counter. The game introduces this melee counter really early on, where if certain enemies do like a flash, like right before they attack, you'll see like a flash. You're able to push the button and it'll counter it. It doesn't always happen, especially with the E.M.M.Is, but it does give you a chance to stun the E.M.M.I and to slide underneath its legs and escape. You're not really able to take these characters on with your regular weapons. You have to get an Omega Blaster, and what you do is, as you explore and navigate the world map, you'll find these like robotic eyeball looking creatures that you have to destroy that give you this Omega power. And this Omega power, you have to hunt down the E.M.M.I. You have to melt its face off with the blaster so that you'll shoot at its face and the face will get like real red hot. The armor comes off and then you have to charge the Omega Blaster and basically shoot the head off. So there's 7 E.M.M.Is total in this game. They're all different colors. There's like a green, a blue, a purple, a white, like a Power Rangers. Anyways, these E.M.M.Is come at you in certain areas of the game. Once you defeat them, it unlocks different abilities and stuff. Kind of standard in a Metroid game. But again, like I mentioned, on top of that, throughout the map, you'll find different areas that have these, you know, those Chozo statues that have like the balls. So you'll get like your missiles, your super missile, you'll get your space jump. Eventually you find the screw attack. So it's just like in all the other Metroid games, Samus eventually finds her powers and becomes, you know, suitable to go into hot temperatures or cold temperatures or even lava. There's about, I guess, 7 different little sectors in various different types of environments and themes and stuff. So there's like an underwater area. Eventually the whole map becomes frozen as well, and you'll find like an area that is kind of like a, I guess, like it looks like inside of a castle, and you'll run into different types of enemies and creatures and things like that. But you will find yourself backtracking a lot, and that's one constant that you'll see in a lot of these Metroid type of games. This one does seem kind of, as far as the world map goes, it doesn't seem as creative, in my opinion, than like some of the other 2D Metroids. For example, Super Metroid just had like a real atmosphere to it. The music, the 16-bit sprites and everything. I guess maybe it's just the art style that they chose to go with this. The art style kind of has like that 2.5D rendering type of look to it. I would have preferred sprites instead. If we would have gotten like a 16-bit sprite, I think that would have been a lot, you know, more, I guess, nostalgic for me and true to the form, and I think that would actually help the atmosphere a little bit better. This one didn't seem as dark and gloomy, except in the E.M.M.I areas, which is fine. It's nothing against the game by any shape or form. I just would have liked this Metroid to feel a little bit more darker and gritty. I don't know if maybe that's what they're planning to do with Prime 4. But I will say the backtracking definitely becomes a grind in this game. I was playing for what felt like ages. This is like the tried and true experience for me when it comes to Metroid. I'll be doing pretty good. I'll get to a boss. I'll get a new ability. Then I'll find myself stuck for quite some time. I'll be like, okay, what do I do? So then I'll go all the way back to square one. I'll look at every nook and cranny. I'll find an odd missile, you know, tank increase, you know, where you can increase your missiles by like 2, or an energy tank increase, or, you know, some kind of weird random power up that I missed. And I'll be like, okay, where to now? You know, and I'll find myself just backtracking for what feels like hours. And then eventually you find, you know, it's usually like a real simple solution. It's like in this game, there's teleports. There's like colored teleports that take you from certain areas that you couldn't get on the map to another area that you couldn't get normally. You have to like reach these teleports and reach certain segments of the map. I will finally eventually get to where I'm trying to go, and then the game's like awesome again, and then I get to another boss fight. And I gotta tell you guys, when it comes to the boss fights in this game, you'll run into some familiar characters like Kraid, who's that big green creature where you have to like shoot his belly and stuff like that. But my God, I swear to God, every single boss fight, and I know it's video game 101, you know, the first boss fight, a little bit of a challenge. Second one, a little harder. Third one, much harder. Fourth one, very hard. And they're supposed to increase in the challenge. But I swear to God, since the first boss battle in this game, all the way towards the end of the game, the boss fights are just relentless the whole way around. Sure, eventually you pick up the pattern. Sure, you eventually develop a strategy because you'll find yourself dying. I swear to God, I was stuck on some of these boss fights for like an hour each, just ready to freaking pull my ass hairs out. But I gotta tell you guys, if you're looking for a Metroid game with some really good boss fights that have a lot of chaos going in them, that require you to hit like switches and grapple over them and swing across and, you know, memorize lots of different patterns in the process, as well as hit different weak points all at the same time and multitask in these boss fights, you're not going to be disappointed with Metroid Dread. You're going to actually be like, wow, these boss fights are really well done. Some of them I was just like, I don't think I can do it. There were some boss fights where I was like, no, there's absolutely no way that I can get past this guy. But I persevered and I continued to do it. I gotta say, the one boss fight that gave me the most trouble was one that was underwater. Like, kind of like a big looking clam thing. And for whatever reason, I just totally missed a switch on the side. There's like a switch on the wall. The idea is that you have to shoot this switch to lower the water. Then you grapple up onto this little like platform that swings across. You shoot the other switch on the other end, and the water disappears, causing the oyster thing to open up, and you have to shoot this oyster. I was doing some charge shots, which take a little bit less damage off the enemy. It wasn't until I remembered, hey, Eric, dummy, you have missiles, that I went to town on it. And I went ham, and I eventually beat this monster, this big enemy. Kraid was a little hard as well, just because he takes up like 2-3 levels of the screen, and a lot of his attacks instantly kill you. There was also a monster like in a fire area. Eventually, the whole map ices over, and you have to defeat this enemy who's like on top of like some kind of machine that is the reason why the temperature's all jacked up. But yeah, I found myself just constantly lost, you know, and that's what these Metroid games are. I gotta say, honestly, in the grander scheme of things, this game does not seem like it would be long at all, as far as like the size of the world, the amount of backtracking that you have to go to. It honestly feels like Metroid games artificially lengthen themselves by making you have to go from point A to point B and back with a new type of weapon that opens up a new area that you weren't able to access. And on top of that, you have these E.M.M.I zones, so you have to avoid E.M.M.I when you're passing through. And I gotta tell you, E.M.M.I is like this game's version of Nemesis or the Tyrant, you know, like in Resident Evil or Mr. X, where you have these certain areas of the map. E.M.M.I is just nuts. You have to try to, on top of trying to backtrack and stuff, you have to remember which zones have E.M.M.I zones. You have to remember, you could, luckily you see where E.M.M.I's at on your map screen and stuff, but sometimes it's just really hard to get past them. And then if you didn't manage to save in certain areas, you'll find yourself getting stuck. Now, thankfully, before the E.M.M.I zones, it kind of does an auto save and automatically starts you there if E.M.M.I kills you. So the game is forgiving in some retrospects, but I did have the game crash out on me one time after I had a fight with one of the Chozos. I believe that's what they're called, right? The Chozos, like those bird-looking, warrior-looking creatures. I fought a Chozo, and it gave me an ability, and then I went on and took on like the blue E.M.M.I or something like that. And then when I was trying to transfer over from a different area of the map to another, the game just completely crashed on me, and I didn't save it. It didn't automatically save. I didn't go to a save point. You know, there's certain different rooms in these Metroid games that allow you to have save point. One major complaint I had, and I was talking to a friend, my friend RGT, I was like, man, I really wish this game had some fast travel point, and it didn't. The closest thing to fast travel, I guess, is once you beat certain areas like the E.M.M.I zones, you're able to actually use those vents once you get the morph ball to travel around, and it opens up little sections. Certain doorways are a little bit easier to get a hold of. Once you have certain different, missiles and stuff, you can open certain doorways as well. Pretty Metroid standard, but I swear Super Metroid had rooms that you could fast travel with, right? Am I correctly remembering that, or am I in Fantasyland and it's never been a thing? I don't know. Either way, I felt that there should have been, at least between save rooms or certain rooms, an ability to fast travel. But I guess then again, that's what actually makes games Metroid or Metroidvanias. I don't know. This game actually, if I'm going to talk about it as a whole, and this is me coming as a kind of a guy that's not a big Metroid fan. I could respect it. Again, like I said, I can respect the legacy. I'm not the biggest Metroid guy. My favorite Metroid up until this point has been Super Metroid. I've completed Metroid Prime 1, Prime 2. I've played very little of the Game Boy Advanced Metroids. And I didn't even try Metroid Prime 3. I have Other M. I played that for like 20 minutes and never picked it up again. But I've never been like this huge, fond, like Metroid fan, like a fanboy, to where it's all I ever think about. Like when Nintendo Directs come up. Some of you guys get pretty crazy Metroid fan. But I gotta say, this game met my expectations. When I initially saw it, I was like, okay, cool, generic 2D Super Metroid, something Nintendo slapped together, low effort, But, again, this is mostly in part to this weird drip feed that we've had, I guess, because of the whole pandemic and things like that. And I needed something action-oriented, as far as a Nintendo first-party game goes. So I believe Nintendo actually did a great job with Metroid Dread. It's been a while since we've kind of had a game that kept my attention for quite some time on the Nintendo Switch. Animal Crossing sure ate a lot of my hours, but Mario Golf, I picked it up, played it a couple days, put it down. What's the other one that just came out? WarioWare. I checked it out, played it for like 2-3 days. Didn't care about it. Age of Calamity, I played through it. It felt like a fucking slog. But Metroid Dread, as grind heavy as Metroid games could get, this one actually kept my attention for quite some time. I believe the first night that I even picked it up, I played it for about 8 hours straight. And I was like, wow, I already had like 4 Emmys out of the 7 killed. I did like 2 or 3 boss fights, and I was just slugging away at it. So for a game that is part of a franchise that I really don't care about, to capture me that long, to hold my attention, and to just have me waste several hours, I think stands a testament of it actually being a well-designed game. So I gotta say, after Super Metroid, and I know this is a tall order and tall statement here because some of you guys live and die by Zero Mission and Metroid Fusion and other games like that. Metroid Dread held my attention longer than any other Metroid game since Super Metroid has. I found myself not wanting to put the controller down. I found myself just getting immersed in it. I found myself backtracking and looking at every little nook and cranny, picking up all the different missile tanks and the energy tanks that I could to power up Samus. The boss fights, as hard as they were, they felt rewarding once you defeated them. The game itself feels very polished. Samus is extremely easy to control. The one thing that I will definitely complain about as far as control goes is that you could not use the D-pad to move Samus around, at least in my recollection. I was using a Pro controller. You weren't able to move Samus around using it. So at times, controlling yourself with the Morph Ball, or kind of like trying to time different jumps, or trying to even do like the speed boost, because once you get the speed boost, you have to use the L, the left analog stick, push it in order to get that speed boost. It just kind of didn't. Sometimes the analog sticks just feel weird, if that makes any sense. But overall, as far as controls go, not half bad. Atmosphere, again, the biggest thing that I have to complain about it is that I would have preferred to have sprites instead of whatever artwork or artistic style that Nintendo decided to go with, this like 2.5D look. With that said, the bosses do look nice. I love how those characters look. I loved the environment. The music You know, Super Metroid had such a classic music, you know, to this day, when you listen to it, it's amazing. You know, just the prologue song for Super Metroid was so memorable. This one, I didn't feel that the music was as great or as memorable as it could have been. But it didn't knock the amount of gameplay that I was able to sink into it. So, as a whole, when it comes to Metroid Dread, this is probably one of the best Nintendo titles I've played in some time. And again, as I said, this is coming from somebody that is not a Metroid fan at all. This is somebody who's just casual. Somebody that really doesn't care about the series. Yeah, if I was to rank Metroid Dread from a 1 to 10, I honestly would give this a solid 8.5. It held my attention. It was easy to control. It had a fair amount of challenge with the boss fights. Lots of hours sunk in, even though the map doesn't feel that big. Going back and trying to complete everything and get as much of the items as you could held my attention. And again, for a series and a franchise that I really don't care about to hold my attention that much, that's pretty good testament in my opinion. So 8.5 out of 10 for Metroid Dread. I know some of you guys might rank this a little bit higher, especially you Metroid guys. That's my opinion. You know, I think that's a pretty good testament to a game. And again, like I said, as far as Nintendo's first party offerings the last year or two, it's just been real hit or miss. You know, lots of times it feels like they play it safe, and that's initially what I thought Nintendo was doing with Metroid Dread. I was like, oh, they're just playing it safe. We're gonna get a 2.5D Metroid game following the same formula or stuff like that. But it was actually quite fun. So with that said, if you haven't checked out Metroid Dread, I hope the gameplay of this video did not spoil too much. Again, I did put a little disclaimer at the beginning of the video if you checked it out or whatever. But definitely a lot of fun when it comes to this game. So I'm gonna go ahead and end the video right there, guys. I appreciate you watching, sticking it out with me. Please, for the love of God, smash that like button. Subscribe if you haven't, and I will see you guys on the next video. Thank you so much for watching as always. You have a great one. I appreciate you.